Right, so it was only in the last couple of weeks that we saw Labour lose majority control of Oxford City Council as 8 of their councillors quit the party over Keir Starmer's ardent pro-Israel anti-ceasefire stance. Labour have managed to cling on to control there, however, as a minority administration. Then last week, as I covered in another video, a letter came from the Labour council leaders of Burnley Borough Council and Pendle Borough Council, calling on Starmer to step down as Labour leader, so that somebody else can lead the party, better able to actually lead on the issue of Israel and Palestine. But over the weekend, things have escalated further in Burnley, and Labour have now lost control completely of that council as it is hit by another slew of resignations there. With no change in his stance and none likely to come anytime soon, just how much more damage to the Labour movement is the refusal to back a ceasefire going to cause to Starmer and his allies? Right, so Burnley Borough Council. It was only last week they penned a joint letter with Pendle Borough Council calling on Keir Starmer to stand down and allow a leadership election to take place. Starmer is blatantly incapable of leading the party full stop. In my mind, I left ages ago after all, but for them, the red line was Israel and Palestine, still is, and his refusal to take a lead there, instead being content to let the Tories and Joe Biden dictate Labour's foreign policy. Labour's position, a position one Labour MP has already said will change the moment the Tories or Joe Biden do, because Starmer just keeps copying them. Well, they've had enough, it would seem, because things have escalated over the weekend, seeing 11 Burnley councillors now quit the party over this issue that is literally half of their councillors, and with it goes control of the council. With 45 seats on Burnley Borough Council, having 22 of the councillors meant Labour had a substantial majority, but with 11 of them having now quit the party and gone independent, the Labour contingent is reduced to just 11 councillors left now. The independent group on the council is now the largest group, who may be able to put together an administration with 13 councillors. The Tories, the Lib Dems and the Greens have 7 councillors each on this council, just for reference. Those resigning from Labour included the council leader and signatory to that resignation letter to Starmer, Afrasiab Anwar. They've put out a statement justifying their decision, saying, "Since the outset of the violence in Gaza and Israel, we, as a collective, have consistently used our roles as councillors to advocate on behalf of our communities to bring peace by urging the leadership to call for a release of all hostages and an immediate ceasefire. We strongly condemn the loss of any innocent life without reservation. Every life holds equal value, and indiscriminate bombing and collective punishment of innocent civilians is a clear violation of international law. We have tirelessly worked to convey this message to various levels of the Labour Party, engaging in extensive efforts such as meeting the Shadow Home Secretary, discussions with the Shadow Foreign Secretary, along with council leaders from across the country, engagement with the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, dialogues with the Scottish Labour leader, sending letters to the Prime Minister, local MPs and Keir Starmer, urging Keir Starmer for a ceasefire and written correspondence, holding discussions with influential leaders and stakeholders at local, regional and national levels, supported a letter calling for a ceasefire signed by over 300 councillors. As a last resort, we took the bold step of calling on Keir Starmer to resign if he was unable to uphold Labour Party values and call for the desperately needed ceasefire. We always felt it was our responsibility as elected members to work to effect change from within. However, despite our persistent endeavours, it has become apparent that Keir Starmer and the leadership either cannot or will not heed our concerns or acknowledge the sentiments within our communities. In his speech at Chatham House, he neglected to call for a ceasefire which would have alleviated the suffering of the innocent people in Gaza and Israel. In response to our calls for him to resign, he responded that the individual concerns of members are not his focus, further illustrating that he does not value the voice of the grassroots of the party. Regrettably, after exhausting every option, we have arrived at the conclusion that the current party stance on Palestine does not align with the values we hold dear. Consequently, we have collectively decided to resign from the Labour Party with immediate effect, feeling that our place within the party is untenable given its present position. We cannot remain in a party that is not doing enough whilst innocent people are being killed in Gaza and Israel. We will continue to represent our communities as independent councillors on our respective councils and use our voice to challenge injustices across the world. So they've engaged with several Labour figures there: Yvette Cooper, David Lammy, Anna Sarwar and Angela Rayner. They've evidently written to Starmer at least twice, before demanding his resignation. They've signed a letter calling for a ceasefire along with over 300 other councillors. I think it's 339. And got a reply to their call for Starmer to stand down by him, saying the issues that matter to them are not what Starmer himself is focused on. He's laser focused, as we've heard before, on winning the next election, of course. But to do what? When he doesn't stand for anything, let alone the Labour values grassroots local government is trying to uphold. If he is this dismissive of his own local councillors, what does he think of ordinary people and what they want? Starmer has now lost 48 councillors up and down the country over his refusal to back a ceasefire, over his obsession with a humanitarian pause where waiting for Palestinians to get their breath back before bombing them again is his preferred course of action. The ridiculous suspension of Andy MacDonald will not have helped matters either, and will only have hardened the resolve of some that trying to make Starmer shift his stance is like beating their heads against a brick wall. He won't move. He won't change. It's not the Labour Party anymore. It's Starmer's private fiefdom. My party, he always calls it. More and more people now saying, you're welcome to it. No, by the way, hell will freeze over before you get my vote back too. The only thing he's going to listen to is his party polling sliding over this issue, but that is staying stubbornly high. I don't believe he's in as good a place as he thinks. I don't think polling is taking into account quite the level of grassroots disgust and the lack of support Labour will have campaigning going into the next election. Of course, the media are playing this down. Naturally, Starmer is establishment, and they've got to come out to bat for him. This morning on Radio 4's Today programme, so we're on to the BBC again, it was put to Council Leader Afrasiab Anwar that your group is entirely Muslim, isn't it? The councillors and the two community activists, all of you, who have written this letter together. Oh, so according to the BBC, this is just a Muslim problem, is it? Really? Well, we'll see about that. Councillor Anwar responded, however, by saying, this is not a Muslim issue. There are people who are passionate about this issue. It's an emotive issue. It is not a Muslim issue. There's a danger here. This is one of the problems that we have. Suella Braverman does this, trying to turn it into a culture war, about turning communities on one another. This is a humanitarian issue. Just some casual Islamophobia from the BBC there, it would seem. Oh, this council group are all Muslims. That must be why they've all quit. They're only worried about the Palestinians because they're all Muslims. Blatantly not true, as their letters and their calls for a ceasefire are for the benefit of Palestinians and Israelis alike. But there's a narrative to set there, and this lot don't fit it. How to discredit them? Well, the fact is, of those 48 councillors who have quit, more than a dozen of them are not Muslim. And of the 300 and so odd councillors who have signed that letter to Starmer calling for a ceasefire, more than 2/3 of them are not Muslim. Starmer doesn't care about what Labour members or even Labour elected officials want on this matter, because all that matters to him is getting into number 10 and impeding the establishment's chosen line to help him get there. This morning on GMB, just to reinforce this point some more, Michael Portillo was on, the train-bothering former Tory MP and a former Defence Secretary, who said Keir Starmer has done exactly the right thing in opposing a ceasefire in Gaza. And this is important because the US would want to know whether or not a future Labour government would deviate from their alliance. From the horse's mouth, or from the Tories' mouth. And again, supporting what I've said in other videos in recent days, that the US and the Tories are in agreement and are dictating foreign policy here to Labour, not just to the Tories in government, but also to Labour in opposition. And equally, it is true what that Labour MP I mentioned at the start of this video said, that it won't be until Joe Biden shifts, Genocide Joe as he's being called in America at the moment, that Starmer will move on his stance on this. Tells you all you need to know about who is in charge. And with Starmer taking his orders from elsewhere constantly, there's little Labour members can do to change things when he won't listen to them, except quit. Labour is the biggest obstacle for change in this country because people still believe voting for them will bring change. All the evidence is there that it will not. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this video in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where Green Party co-leader Carla Denyer rinsing Piers Morgan over this very issue on Laura Kuenssberg's establishment-friendly Sunday morning politics show shows they're the party to back if you want a ceasefire. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.